Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. I'm Tom Murray, your host, and yet again, I am fired up for this episode, my friends. We have the one and only Dr. Patricia Brent-Sanco from the Lynwood School District in California. And my friends, you are in for it this time around. I cannot wait. Patricia, how you doing, my friend? What's going on in your world?
I am doing great. I'm so honored to be with you today, Tom. It's just great to see you.
Yeah. So in your role, thank you for that, by the way. And in your role, you're the Director of Equity, Access, and Instructional Services, which to me is probably the finest title and most important title I think I've ever heard on someone. I'm familiar with your district, your incredible superintendent that you work with. But for folks that may not be familiar with your work, tell folks a little bit about maybe your career trajectory to this point, and then the work you lead each day.
So I'm celebrating my 28th year in education. Started off in Paramount Unified. Shout out to Paramount, middle school teacher, grade level chair, assistant principal, and I served 14 years as the principal, K5 and K8 in Paramount. And then in 2016, had a interview here with Lynwood, had conversations with the one and only Dr. Paul Gothel, and he asked would I be the inaugural director of equity for Lynwood. And so the position started off as director of equity. They had been doing a lot of equity work in terms of giving students what they need when they need it. What programs and services and supports do we have for all students? And then in 2019, they asked would I take on an additional department, which was state and federal categorical. So equity, access, and instructional services. So all things equity, and then all things state and federal categorical, which I love because I can do the work of getting programs and services to students and families, and then I know where all the money is. So I love that marriage of having equity and state and federal.
That's awesome. Love it. And I think every district leader listening to this knows the feeling of we're going to give you something else and we're going to put something else in your title on top of that as well. But I also love the synergy around those pieces and the importance of all of those pieces coming together. Before we dive into some questions, so out in Lynwood there, share with folks a little bit about where Lynwood is, a little bit about the demographics, how many students and all that as well.
So Lynwood Unified is in LA County. We sit in the nucleus between like Long Beach, Paramount, Downey, Compton, and then Lynwood is kind of in the middle. Our students are 98% free and reduced lunch. We have about 94% Latino or Latinx students, about 5% African American, 1% Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Indigenous. And then we serve over 11,000 students. We have about 33% English learners, those students who are categorized or through testing identified as English learners.
That's awesome. What a
I'm
great.
really proud of our graduation rates across the scale. We are exceeding the state in all of our graduation rate markers.
Yeah, well, and kudos to leadership. That doesn't happen unless we're intentional about it, and it takes great leadership to do those. And shout out to you and the superintendent and so on and so forth for the incredible work that you're all leading. I also know that you're involved, and I want to give a shout out to our friends over at AXA. I've been at a variety of the AXA events. Incredible work happens with the administrative organization there in California. I understand that you have been really involved with that. I want to give that a shout in a moment, but I also know that you did in one of your big speeches there and your role there, something called that you coined Dear Equity Warrior. And I want to dive into that a little bit because, All for Ed, the organization that Future Ready is the practice side, All for Ed's an equity focused organization. So talk to us about part of your message there, maybe some context around that, some of the main points that you lead, especially at a time here we are in early 2025, we're just all the pieces that are out there, the political pieces, just all the pressure school and district leaders face. Talk to us about that message a little bit and what you shared with folks.
So, yes, I've had a wonderful relationship with AXA going back about at least 15 years. I am vice president, elected membership services in our region. And then I've been the leadership summit chairperson for the past 3 years. And I am president of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council for the Association of California School Administrators. And so at our annual institute, I did a keynote called A Love Letter to Equity Warriors. And, some of the highlight is, dear equity warrior, equity is not complicated, political, or divisive. It's very simply giving students what they need when they need it. And then I took them through a history of how did we get here? Starting with 1635 when the first Boston Latin School was founded, through to 1821, the founding of the first public school in Boston, Massachusetts, to 1990 with the American Disabilities Act, and then all the way through 2023, which was the Students for Fair Admission, Harvard versus North Carolina Supreme Court decision that, had very difficult ramifications regarding affirmative action in college admissions. And so just wanted to really talk to our leaders, and in terms of, are we doing the hard work or are we just working hard? Going back to that blueprint by Dr. Ron Edmonds, that we can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to know to do this. Whether we do it finally depends on how we feel about the fact that we haven't done it so far. And then, dear equity warrior, are we a rocking horse or a racehorse? And I love that quote by Denzel Washington that says, never confuse movement with progress, because you can run in place and not get anywhere. And so are we just rocking horses going through the motion, or are we racehorses trying to get these kids to the finish line? And then looking at who's teaching our children. I always think about how important recruitment and retention and working with our teachers to make sure that they have the knowledge and their skills, and that there are no pedagogical barriers in teaching and learning, and that you have people who I like to call willing workers. Do we have some willing workers who are actually teaching our kids? And then we went on to, talk about, I shared that parents do care and they want their kids to succeed. And I talked about that intergenerational trauma is real. And I, was a little transparent and shared with them the newspaper articles where the KKK burned my father's house down in Santa Cruz, California, when he was a young minister working with the Southern Christian Leadership Council and Dr. King, and they tasked him to try to integrate the Santa Cruz Baptist Church. And so he went to, get a house because he was commuting from San Francisco to Santa Cruz. And I said that even in my family, coming from two educators, we still have that trauma. We still know what happened, and how we approach our parents who may have been harmed by the same system that they're sending their kids to now. I encourage all of our equity warriors, dear equity warrior, our work will fall short if we don't focus on literacy. And then last but not least, your silence is your sentence. Every time a person stands up for an ideal or strikes back against injustice, we all know that quote from Robert F. Kennedy, not Jr., but Senior, that talks about those ripples can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. So just speak up. See, when you think about diversity, it is just a number. Inclusion is being able to be present in that space And so I like to say, I want a seat and a say. I want to be the diverse number, but I also want the inclusion and belonging part because I want to be able to share my thoughts, my opinions, and be seen, valued, and heard. So just a love letter to Equity Warriors. Dear Equity Warrior, you can do it. And let me hear you roar. You're not just an educator, you're a life changer.
So, Patricia, I think I'm just going to get out of the way for the rest of the podcast, and you
No,
just go. Because I can listen to you go. You are preaching. I can listen to you all day long. So you got another 15 minutes. You just roll, talk about whatever you want to talk about, girl. Because that's what I'm seeing. That is awesome. I'm just over here nodding my head, and I kudos to you for just your passion is so radiant in all of your work there, and
thank
would
you.
have loved to have been at that keynote and just hear you talk from the heart about those pieces. And thank you for sharing, truly some of the pieces that your family's been through as well, and you can see why your passion is there. But it absolutely radiates. Wow, thank you for sharing that. Truly, let's talk about moving from equity with AXA and that speech, and really giving those words of encouragement, and also that challenge to leaders, which is so great. Talking about Lynwood, talk to us a little bit about some of the work that's happening there across the board, some of the things you're doing for kids that you all are proud of, because I know it's an incredible district, and you have, there's lots of excuses out there we could make of our kids are this or our kids are that in terms of why we might not succeed as some districts may, and you don't have any of that nonsense. You're seeing right through that. We're going to figure this out for each child. And so tell us about some of the greatness that's happening there for the kids in Lynwood.
So, we make it a point of loving our kids. And so, if you think about just the aspect of I am going to see you, I'm going to value you, that means that there will be no barriers. So I go back to years of work with that had been done even prior to me getting here in 2016, where our AP classes, there are no prerequisites. So there is always a constant mission to eliminate barriers. We are a community schools district where we're given $24 million dollars, and all of our schools have social emotional learning specialists. We have community schools case managers who work directly with families to provide resources and information and anything that we can help eliminate any barriers. If there's a barrier with attendance, we're working on those things. We have affinity groups, meaning there are safe spaces for across the district for both staff, students, and parents. So our Lynwood Pride Committee, our Lead with Pride, our Gay Straight Alliances at our high schools, our African American Parent Advisory Councils, our PAC, our Migrant Ed Parent Advisory Councils, our English Learner Parent Advisory Councils. And then for our students, we have our Young Black Achievers, our Dreamers, our Los Sueños, our Humane Society. We're trying to create spaces where our Asian American Pacific Islander family nights and that family network. We're trying to create spaces on this beautiful Lynwood patchwork quilt where everyone has a area and arena where they feel that they can come, get what they need, and their child will be seen and respected. We have a multi-year equity plan that's on our website. And this diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, this is the second iteration of it. It was board approved last year, 2023, and it goes through our 5 goals, overarching goals, which aligns to our strategic plan, and then our LCAP, because I do state and federal, so our LCAP goals align to the strategic plan, and our equity plan aligns to the strategic plan. And so it just starts with what we're going to believe. And so in Lynwood, we believe equity is providing unfettered, differentiated support and access to all students. And it's our moral obligation to provide opportunities for every student to fearlessly achieve their own personal and professional aspirations. And so, how do we do that? Well, we make it a point that culturally responsive instructional practices will permeate throughout the organization. That then looks like ethnic studies classes. That then looks like African American history classes. That looks like social justice standards lessons that are infused. If you go to Learning for Justice, you'll see the social justice standards that are in four domains of identity, action, justice, and diversity. And so you look at those four tenets, and we pull lessons that match our English language standards. And so you think about identity. Okay, well, we're looking at having kids write about their own culture, that they'll develop a positive feeling about who they are. And so if I feel good about me, then I'm able to relate positively to you. Which is it's a whole pyramid and hierarchy, which identity. I know who I am. I'm proud of who I am with no reservation or fear. And then I go to diversity. Okay, well, what is that? I'm proud of who I am. I value and validate others who do not share my cultural identity. And justice. I know who I am. I respect you, and now I can analyze the harmful effects of unfair or unjust treatment to you. And then lastly, action. I know who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I respect your culture. I see that there may be harmful effects. And now I'm able to do something or say something or take some type of action about it. And so in our plan, we break down what we are doing for each one of those groups, including our AAPI students, Indigenous students, our LGBTQIA, our special ed students, English learners, African Americans. It goes on and on. And there are concrete action steps that we take for each one of those groups.
You know, Patricia, there's a lot of folks that talk about equity, not as many folks that live it every day. And y'all are living it every single day. And truly being able to rattle off those incredibly inclusive that create opportunities and access to those that may not have it without those different policies and the way that you've gone about it. Kudos to you and your team for doing what's needed to be done for each child. Julie, I stand in awe of the things that you're sharing, and kudos for that work. And we know that there's work still left to be done. Question for you about, so if I'm a school or district leader and I'm listening in, I think about so much of what we've talked about really is mindset, self-reflection, being able to look in the mirror. Where are my own blind spots? What am I missing as an individual so I can learn? So much of this really, if I'm thinking about the teachers that are in your classrooms, I'm a new principal hire in your district. What do you do to support staff so that they align with the vision that you've laid out, that equity focused vision, maybe in your new hires or the professional learning? Talk to us about how staff is supported in the vision that you've so eloquently laid out.
Well, I want to give kudos to my school board because they have not been corrupted, for lack of a better word, or they did not allow equity to become a dirty word in their district. They did not allow equity to become politicized. We kept the meaning pure. So what is it? It's giving students what they need when they need it, giving parents what they need when they need it, giving staff members what they need when they need it. And so we kept it pure and we just kept it, that's the focus. It's not about bringing in all of the, taking away something from someone else. Or I'm only going to, if I focus on this group, then I won't have enough resources to focus on this group. And so they dispelled the myth of scarcity and said, we're going to do what's right for kids because they are human, and we're going to look at them as human beings who deserve civil rights. So I just want to, say, one, thank you to my board. Two, in terms of our teaching staff, we had to work very strategically with our teacher unions. to say, again, this is not political. This is in Lynwood. This is how we're going to treat kids. That we want everyone to be treated with a sense of fairness and respect and unwavering belief that these kids can do it, being that warm demander. Okay. And so that work is ongoing, but it starts from our HR department, which I work hand in hand. Shout out to Geraldine Rezanito and Carlos Zaragoza, with the recruitment and the retention and the interview process. So when you come in our boardroom, our tenets are very clear: equity, access, and justice. During the interview process, you will be asked about how you would handle and how you treat all students. You have to talk about what is your own mission statement for working with all kids. How do you feel about male students versus female students? Or what is your experience working in a very diverse population, diverse school ecosystem? From there, we have our professional development team that coordinates our calendars for the year, and our department provides professional development to both certificated and classified staff throughout the year. We kick it off at the beginning of the year with our Summer Institute, where over 350 teachers are trained, and it's almost like their own conference. We have 10 equity offerings, anything from PBIS to handling micro and macro aggressions in the workplace, right? And they get to choose. We use the Howard Group. We use some other providers to help us curate that conference time. And then from there, we have equity warrior site teams who have been trained. So on every campus, there are 2 or 3 expert teachers, and then we offer various professional developments, throughout the year. One work that is always ongoing is about unconscious bias and grading. Grading is an equity issue that Lynwood has tried to tackle. We're one of the few districts that has an equitable grading resolution policy and administrative regulations co-signed by our board, board approved. And I can't thank our deputy superintendent, Dr. Shauna Dinkins, enough for allowing me to work with her and our unions to say during the pandemic, we need something in writing that talks about what equitable grading looks
Yeah, and we could spend how many days and
like.
years
Yeah,
on that conversation as well, for sure. But
right.
kudos for all the work that you're leading. Just such imperative work, such a beacon of hope and light for all others that are working in this area. Truly, a couple of pieces that I want to ask you about before we wrap up. You're somebody that other people go to that says, "Help us do this." Yeah, you've worked with other districts through your lighthouse work and some other pieces. Thinking about, and even through CASA, the other. I'm wondering when you sleep is the last thing I was going to say. You got all these things going on. Truly, talk to folks about some of the things that you've done that you do even outside of Lynwood to support districts in this area and what that's looked like.
The work is ongoing, and you find yourself in a position where you like, I don't want this work or supporting kids to be in a bubble or isolation to just Lynwood. And so I am the CEO of the Lighthouse Educational Consulting Group, and we support school districts in establishing equity plans. We also support with parent engagement and parent workshops about how they can support their kids and getting their kids to the finish line. We do student empowerment workshops where we talk about becoming student leaders and having a leadership academy, using project-based learning in STEM. And so just to, make sure that the work is just not contained. The lighthouse has been ongoing and supporting school districts since about 2018. I also work with CASA, the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. In 2015, I co-founded Unity Professional Women's Networking Organization, and we are the female arm of CASA, and we support African American female educators. And shout out to USC, Rossier School of Education. I'm former board of counselors. I work with their alumni council, and we work hand in hand with Dean Pedro Noguera. And that's another avenue where we're trying to ensure that people can go to USC, get the best training. We have a wonderful teacher preparation program that you can go and be funded to really learn the best practices on educating children.
Yeah, that's awesome. One other piece that I'd love to ask you about is, as a white male looking in my own screen here, seeing my own personal reflection, and you've referenced so many times just the networks that you're tied into. Talk to those leaders of color, talk to those female leaders, just really about the importance of those affinity groups and those networks and tying in to folks that understand and get you, and the ability to be able to tie into the importance as leaders to tie into those groups, especially female leaders that face challenges that Tom Murray never faced, and leaders of color that face challenges that I never faced. And I recognize that. And so talk to those leaders of color, talk to those female leaders that are up against some of those challenges and ways that they can plug in or connect, or the importance of being able to do so, or resources. What encouragement do you have for them?
Well, it has been a very trying time for many like-minded female leaders. And I go back to many years in Paramount where I was the only African American principal. There were a number of years. I was the fourth African American principal ever hired since the district was established in 1953. And so you have to have a network. I like to call it your tribe, because without it, you feel very isolated, you feel disconnected, and you don't get the same level of resources or opportunities when you're working in your own little silo. So, number one, I would encourage you to join organizations like AXA that has female leadership workshops and a female leadership network. And most importantly, if you're an African American female leader or a woman of color, CASA, California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. It is the largest statewide organization in the nation, and they have leadership academies, they have professional development all year long, and networking opportunities. You're not alone. And although it may feel like a very lonely, disconnected time, just know that you are not alone, and to please reach out. Unity has a website, Unity Emoja, UMOJA.org. You go there, go to the CASA website. We would love to have you join us. I know that their next conference is coming up, and the Unity Women's Forum is March 25th. Go to the CASA website and check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And you've given you. Always want to end on a question about giving people a piece of advice, something from the heart. It's what I've done on every episode that we've had of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. And I feel like you've been giving advice this entire time. But if you had one final piece, no matter who's listening, whether they're an experienced superintendent, a new principal, or a teacher leader, wherever they are, in whatever state they're in, whatever position they're in, here we are, February of 2025. What's one thing from your heart, one piece of advice that you have right now for them?
Please remember that Our lives matter. What we do matters. If you're a teacher and you teach 10 years, you have 25 kids in your class, you have impacted 250 lives. If you're a principal, remember the students that you have on your campus, their parents, they are people. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in what is going on around us. The noise gets so loud that we lose the humanity in what we're trying to do. You know, life is not a matter of milestones, but it's a matter of moments. And so what are we going to do in this moment? I know sometimes you feel defeated and unappreciated. I know sometimes our jobs are lonely and hard, but plant these seeds now. We're going to work together and we're going to plant these seeds now. You know, I end all of my workshops with saying that we facilitate structural changes in school systems that traditionally underserve and marginalize students. That is true. But the greatest gift we give is to create environments where every student can thrive. We are game changers. We are lifesavers, motivators, teachers, and lifelong learners. I know our work is challenging, but the stakes are great. We cannot and we will not fail, for we know it's our life's calling to liberate students from all constraints that hold them back.
Patricia, if we were standing on a stage right now, I would say go ahead and just drop that mic,
Oh,
and then you can
no,
walk away from it at the end there.
no.
Incredible words of wisdom, my friend. I got nothing after that. I got nothing
Oh,
left to say. Truly, I'm glad we're at the end of the podcast because
oh my
I
God.
can't follow up from that, my friend.
Look, like Tupac, keep your head up. Keep your head up. I know it's hard out there. Keep your head up. Even if they get rid of the Department of Education, you still have your departments to run. And you have those beautiful babies right in front of you, and they are counting on you. What will you do in this moment?
Amen to that. Everybody, everyone, that is the one and only Dr. Patricia Brent-Sanco. Don't tell me that that wasn't one of the most live, fun, enjoyable, and biggest pushes we've had on Leading Through Unprecedented Times. Patricia, my friend, what an honor to have you. Thank you so much for your time. Keep leading the way, and much love to my friends out there in Lynwood.
Thank you.